Hi all, this is Abhishek. I work as a technical architect with a leading organization. I'm an expert in Microsoft.NET, Azure Platform as a Service Cloud, Artificial Intelligence, Intelligent Automation, and Machine Learning. And today we will discuss how to sample data using Azure Machine Learning Studio. Okay, let's get started. So before we get into the details, let us try to understand what data sampling means. Data sampling is a technique to extract a subset or a proportion of data from a larger dataset. When we have huge datasets, this technique helps in extracting a representative sample that can be analyzed instead of analyzing the huge parent dataset. And this is definitely efficient and performant because we are not analyzing the huge dataset. Instead of analyzing the huge dataset, what we are doing is we are extracting a representative sample from the huge dataset that represents almost all the cases that are present in the huge dataset, and we infer the result. And since we work on a smaller dataset instead of the huge dataset, we say that it is efficient and performant. But one thing we should be very careful of, there are chances of getting sampling error if the sample size is too small. So when the sample size is small, we may end up in not having a representative dataset. That means all cases available in the population data or the larger dataset is not available in the sampled dataset, and hence it is not representative and we have a chance of getting sampling error. Okay, so let us try to understand what a stratified sampling is in the context of Azure Machine Learning Studio. So when we select stratified sampling in Azure Machine Learning Studio, these are the steps that are performed. We will see in details when we get into the Azure Machine Learning Studio. So the step 1 is a strata column is selected. So data rows are then grouped in the next step based on the values in the strata column. Then once the data rows are grouped, in the next step, that is in step 3, the rows are shuffled. So once the rows are shuffled in step 3, in the step 4, data rows are picked up from each group in such a way that the ratio of data present in each group is maintained. So this is the theoretical part. Do not worry about this. We will see stratified sampling in action when we are doing the Azure Machine Learning Studio. But just have the steps in mind. First step is to select the strata column in the dataset. Based on the values of the strata column, data rows are grouped. Then for each of the group, then the rows are shuffled and data rows are selected from each group in such a way that the ratio of data present in the entire dataset is maintained in the sample data as well. Okay, so we had enough of theory. Let's get into the Azure Machine Learning Studio. Okay, so I have already created an experiment and have named it as sampling. I have already picked up a saved dataset that I had previously imported, students.csv. Let me visualize this dataset, students.csv. So it has 10 rows and 4 columns. We have a column as roll number, name, whether the student takes tuition, and what is the exam results. So let's do some sampling on this dataset. Okay. Here I have selected the module Partition and Sample, and since we are going to explore sampling, I have selected the option sampling here Do not worry about the other options. We will see in the next videos. In this video, we will concentrate on the sampling option and the head option. Assign to folds and pick fold are something related to partitioning. In the next video, I will talk about this. So let me select sampling. Then I have kept the rate of sampling as 0.5. What it means is, out of the entire data set, 50% of the data will be sampled. So let me explain you what it means. Let me just visualize the data set again. And here we see we have 10 data rows and I have selected a sampling value as 0.5. So out of 10 rows, 50, since I have selected 0.5, 50% of the rows will get selected. That is, the output result will have 5 rows. Then there is an option to specify whether to do a stratified split or not. So let us try to first run by marking stratified split as false. Let me run the experiment. The experiment has completed. Let me visualize. And here we have 5 rows that have been randomly sampled. So if you remember what I said, we have selected the sampling rate as 0.5, that is 50%. So out of 10 rows, 5 rows are selected. Now let me just go back to this module and select stratified sampling as true, and let me select a column. Maybe I can take text tuition. Now let me run the experiment. It's taking a bit. Please be patient. It's done. Okay. So now let us try to understand what has happened when we have selected stratified split for sampling as true and we have selected the strata column as text tuition. If you remember the steps, the first step was in the stratified sampling case was to select a strata column. Here we have done this, that is text tuition column. We have selected as a strata column. So what will happen is, the next step, the data. Okay, let me open the data set first. So in the next step, the data will be grouped based on text tuition, like based on the yes values and the no values. So all the yes values will be grouped into one group and all the no values, the n values, will be kept in another group. So now we have 2 groups of data. One has 4 y values and another has 6 n values. So once this grouping is completed based on the y values or the n values, then the rows in this groups are, each of the groups are shuffled, and then the rows are picked based on the ratio. The rows are picked in such a way that the ratio is maintained. What I mean by this is, there are 4 y values and 6 n values. So the ratio of y values to n values is 4:6, that is 2:3. What it means is, for every 2 y values, or rather for every rows that has 2 y values that is getting selected, we will have 3 n values that will get selected so as to maintain the selected ratio. Now let's see what the result we have got. We have selected the sampling percentage as 0.5. So what it means is, if the sample rate is 0.5, then we'll have 5 rows selected. And since we have the data ratio of 2:3, what it implies is out of those 5 rows, 2 would be yes values and 3 would be no values. So let's check whether it's the case. And here we are. We see we have 5 values selected, 5 data rows selected, as the sampling rate was 0.5, and the ratio of the data is also mentioned. You can see there are 2 rows that has y values have been selected and 3 rows that has n values are selected, and text tuition we had selected as a strata column. Now let us move to the next concept of head. So when I select a head here and mention the number of rows to select as say like 4, what will happen is the first 4 rows in the data set will get selected. So let's see. We had 10 rows in the data set, and when we examine this data set, the output data set, we see the first 4 rows from 1 to 4 are selected. Okay, so this is what I had planned for today, and I'm done with it. Thanks a lot for being patient and watching this video. Stay tuned. In the next video we will discuss on how to partition data using Azure Machine Learning Studio. If you have any queries, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to help you. Thank you.